Hi, welcome. So glad that you can join us for this special edition of my series of interviews with inspiring, innovative professionals and scholars of the media around the world. I have the distinct privilege to be sitting down today with Oana Ruxandra. Oana is the Chief Digital Officer and Executive Vice President for Business Development at the Warner Music Group. One of the three majors in the global music industry. And before joining Warner, she spent a couple of years at the Universal Music Group, and before that, she was already at Warner as a Vice President of Digital Strategy and Business Development. She has a background in finance and economics, is a passionate music fan, and she and her team are in charge of creating interesting storytelling and revenue opportunities for artists and communities around digital transformation. And I'll be talking with her today about, managing her team and evangelizing the potentials of the digital, the promise and perils, perhaps, of Web3 and the Metaverse, and the significance of an entrepreneurial culture and what that means in the context of all the major disruptions and innovations that any media industry is going through, but the music industry tends to experience and feel first. So sit back, enjoy, and love to hear from you if you have any questions or comments. And please check out all the other interviews in this series. So thanks again for doing this. Really appreciate this. I just want to dive right in and talk a little bit about. I wouldn't even say what's happening right now, but it was just around the corner. There is a lot of buzz throughout the media industry about all the new possibilities of Web3 and NFTs and the Metaverse and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And what I'm really interested in is to see how you look at this and all these discussions specifically from the perspective of course, the music industry and of artists, and not just as a way of, business models and economic opportunities, but specifically creative opportunities, new experiences, new storytelling possibilities that these discussions seem to promise, or perhaps seem to prevent. I don't know. I would appreciate your take on that.
Sure. Just back up a little and say that my job as a digital lead at one of the majors is to try to enable dynamic, healthy market ecosystem in the music industry. There's three majors in the world. There's three people. I'm one of them, so there's two others in the world. So there's not a lot of people making kind of these decisions within the ecosystem, but it's been a process, and it's certainly a process to try to understand how to create a healthy ecosystem. So in the ecosystem today, what we have is a fairly limited set of fan capabilities. It's actually pretty hard to be a fan today. So you can buy some merch, you can go to a tour, you can obviously go stream on your favorite streaming service, but beyond that, it's actually pretty hard to spend money on the artists that you love. The gaming ecosystem has evolved in a very different way, and that's for specific reasons. So in 2007, when Spotify came and looked for licenses in the music ecosystem, the music industry was in a fairly defensive place, and it gave a set of functionality content, tools, etc., that it then gave to multiple other players in the market. And the ecosystem evolved with those licenses in place. And what it evolved into was what we see today, $9.99 and ad supported, right, as the two kind of main ecosystems that you can listen to music. The gaming ecosystem evolved in a very different way because they didn't have the licensing framework that music does. Gaming evolved around consumer behavior and consumer tastes. And so what we saw was that gaming, for gaming, 30% of the revenue is an ad or a paywall. And then all of the other interactions that gaming has is 70% of the revenue. And so when you're in an app, you're buying a battle pack or buying a skin or whatever, merch, all of those things, all of those moments when you're being a fan of a game are actually twice as much revenue than the 30%, right? And they are interactive and dynamic and enable consumers to be fans and to be a community. And ultimately that community and that building of a community is the thing that I think is the most important thing in gaming that the world of music right now is missing in some way. What we're seeing today in terms of the evolution of Web3 is what I think is really what the consumers have wanted for a very long time, which is an ability to be part of a community that experiences content together, experiences experience together, creates those experiences as well, and then also creates revenue within those experiences, right? And so with Web3, yeah, there's a lot of catchwords, the metaverse and NFTs, all of those things. But what ultimately we're seeing build in the space and in the ecosystem is communities of fans that are coming together around the artists that they love, around the types of genres that they love, around the music that they love, and then creating community experiences, all of the things around those genres. And that's what we find so exciting about Web3. It's not that it's taking us to some, and this was true of a lot of technologies, right? It's not that technology is taking us to some unheard of place. It's taking us to a place that we probably were in 100 years ago or more than 100 years ago. Recorded music has only really been around for 100 years. If you think about what a song is, what an album is, that's because of the technology that was there to enable what a song was, right? A vinyl could hold 3 minutes. Another vinyl could only hold 22 minutes on either side. Those are albums, those are songs. So the creation of songs and the creation of albums is really a manifestation of technology that's been around for less than 100 years. Before then, there were patrons that created with the artists that they helped, that they sponsored. There were communities and consistency of experiences, of interactions that those communities and those artists had. Then recorded music came around and kind of put a stage under an artist and put the audience in a stage between the audience and the artist, created final products, created moments that maybe made that relationship a little bit more stilted. And I think that with each new technology, the artist is getting closer and closer to their audience, and they're becoming a community. And the community's part of the experience, right? I think that's the biggest piece of it. We don't necessarily think that this future that we'll be in, and I don't know if it'll be this decade or another decade, but that it will include, the consistent release of final products, right? I think that there's going to be more of a creation cycle, more of an interaction cycle. So we see a lot of change in the idea of Web3, but it really, from our perspective, really brings us back to the roots of where music was, a century ago.
I mean, and that's, really appreciate that insight. It's striking in general that a lot of the discussion in this area is about technology and is about the digital. And it's of course, the title of your position and the work that your team does. But from what you're saying and from what we're seeing in general debate across the industry, that it seems more a debate about, like you said, community and about cultural transformation, thinking differently about what you can do with products and experiences rather than those being determined by specific technologies, and more by a different way of interacting, of experiences, of collaborations, perhaps also between artists and producers and consumers or fans, as you say. So this cultural transformation, so the digital as seen as a cultural transformation, how do you manage that? I mean, I'm specifically referencing like when you came back to Warner, you in 2019. I read somewhere that you were really excited about the entrepreneurial culture of the company. And now, traditionally, perhaps entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial culture is seen very much in terms of business and economics, but it seems that you were referring to, and I'm kind of picking that up from what you're saying now as well, is that it's more as like a way of looking at what kind of products and experiences are being created, and sort of leveraging that. I mean, how do you see entrepreneurial culture, and how do you, as you know, manage that for yourself as a professional?
Sure. And obviously you've done your homework, so thank you, Mark. Appreciate it. I think one of the key things with me is that I'm in the music industry because I'm passionate about music, and I'm passionate about music as it touches culture and affects culture. I think that depending on where society is, music is probably somewhere near it, right? If you're spinning out clickbait music that can just be listened to once, that all sounds the same, I think culture is probably somewhere near it. And I think that if you're spinning out really interesting music that is deeply affecting people over the long term, then culture is maybe in somewhere else. So I'm very passionate about the music industry because I believe that it can affect culture, and I believe that our ability to enable artists to thrive and survive and be the artists that they want to be is an important piece of our world. And so I think that the piece that you just said around culture is really important, because I do think that what we're doing is culturally relevant, right? Or I wouldn't be in this position. The reason I'm back at Warner is because it does have an entrepreneurial spirit. We're the smallest of the majors. We've been able to make an enormous number of investments, enormous number of deals very quickly. That's with the support of my boss, Steve, who's been amazing, and with our board as well. We have, a fairly flat network of people where everyone can talk to each other, and I think that that's incredibly exciting and useful. I'm focused on making change in the world through music, and to be able to do that, you have to be enabled by great teams and great people, and that's definitely what I feel like I'm surrounded by now. So absolutely, the entrepreneurial side is a key part of it. I think one of the other things I'll say is that there's been risk aversion in the music industry for some time. There's been some defensiveness, and that's one of the things that I don't have ingrained in me. And I think you see change in the music industry and the people in the music industry as it grows and as it evolves. And ultimately, again, the recorded music industry is not that old, so it's or actually not that old at scale, right? And so I think that the entrepreneurial side is deeper and deeper ingrained in the industry. I think that being able to get things done is more able. You're able to do that more readily. I think one of the other things that's really exciting about the music industry is that you see things first, right? You see technologies first. We tend to be the media industry that is disrupted the quickest. And so we see things far before anyone else does, and we can kind of forecast what other media types we'll be seeing. So I think that's pretty exciting as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, like all the other industries are now having their Napster moment and their Spotify moment and so on. It's that's indeed very much the case. So I've talked to some people that are kind of in your position, but in different industries, like chief digital officers in large advertising holding firms or in news organizations. And what they tend to say is that part of their job is, of course, doing the innovation and the sort of the coming up with seeing what's up ahead and connecting artists and communities and products and all that kind of stuff. But part of it is also, and I've heard the word evangelism bandied about quite a lot, sort of convincing those parts of the company or the industry or even artists or creatives of the possibilities of the digital.
Yeah.
Does that go for your position as well? And how do you get people excited about the possibilities?
Yeah, that's very insightful. It's actually it's very real. My team negotiates our deals with our biggest players in the market, as well as new insurgents, and those negotiations sometimes are a lot easier than the internal negotiations that we have. The industry is changing. The way in which we think about what music is changing. When I say that a song isn't necessarily, a song or the main form of music, and that it's been created by the technology, and that technology is changing, that can scare people. And so there's a lot of time in my position spent on evangelizing internally, a lot of time spent internally negotiating. Obviously, we have a very big business in the current market, right? In the current form of listening. And so to be able to evolve into something new while keeping the ship upright, right? And keeping it continuing to move. That's a difficult thing for any company to manage, right? This transformation. And especially with the music industry, every decade or so, we have to transform. And the technology gets that much more interesting. And, we have to do more with each kind of technological evolution. We've had to do more with streaming. We had to sign more artists. We had to release more content with Web3. We'll have to, get the right piece of music or right content type to the right platform at the right time, to the right audience member, right? And so those things are harder. They require more. They require more efficiency, more people, et cetera. And so that can be difficult for some people that have been in the industry for a bit and have already gone through the change, and it wasn't that great and it was impactful to get their heads around. So yes, an enormous amount of time of my time is spent internally negotiating, internally evangelizing. The first investment that we did at Warner when I joined was Dapper Labs, which is an NFT play. When I was walking around telling people about cat NFT and how important it was, there weren't a lot of people listening to me. But obviously with change and with noise, there's been a lot more people and a lot more interest. So yes, evangelizing takes time, it takes effort, but I will again say that the industry is used to change. And so where in other industries it might not be, it might be a little bit scarier. Most people have seen it and know that it's coming. And when I say, that we're in a certain type of listening behavior now, but it will change, that makes sense to everyone. So that's not something that I need to explain. What I need to explain is the specifics of how it will change. And that's where the important piece, the nuance of it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I know how pressed for time you are, so I will keep this brief. I have maybe one final question for you,
sure.
if you don't mind, which has to do with something about the digital transformation. Of course, we've talked about it a lot already today, but one thing that really strikes me is that if anything, what digital transformation seems to mean for both individual media professionals as well as companies and businesses as a whole, across all disciplines, whether it's journalism, games, music, or whatever, is sort of a blurring of the boundaries, where all kinds of different parts of the business, the creation, the ideation, the financing, the distribution, the marketing, it all sort of collapses. I mean, you have like one person who does everything, or everything gets split up into countless subsidiaries. It is quite I mean, if you're stuck in thinking about the industry in the old way, then the new way seems to be sort of a bit of fantasy world.
Yeah.
Or perhaps very stressful. Like, do I have to know all these things? And in your job description, it also speaks to how that part of what you and your team are doing is working with so-called non-traditional partners. That to me immediately rang the bell of, okay, blurring boundaries, mixing things up. How do you see this working for the industry as a whole, not just the music industry, but I guess to talk about the music industry, the film industry, gaming, and you've expressed your excitement about gaming and the gaming industry, and how all entertainment will become kind of like gaming. How do you see this specific aspect of this transformation evolving, this blurring of the boundaries and everything having to do with everything else, and being non-traditional in all of this?
Yeah, and another great question. I think that you're absolutely right. I think that the lines between media types are going to be blurring. I also think that the lines between what artists want to do and what creators want to do within those media types will blur, right? You'll see it today. Big artists will want to sing songs. They'll also want to be in a movie. They'll want to be in a TV show. They'll want to do other things. I think all of the lines between content types will start to blur. And I think that as a music company, for example, we will need to, and we do, what we're expert at, what music labels are expert at, on and a couple other things, but key to them are, one, creating story and driving narrative through content, right? Creating engaging pieces of content. And obviously that tends to be in song and album format, but there's an ability and a real ability to understand the cultural relevance of a song, cultural relevance of an album, and the person and their story. And so that's one piece of it. And then the marketing piece of it. And I think those two things are incredibly important for the future as they pertain to not only music, but also video, TV, film, etc. And so I think that you will see that one company that can, a label that can do the music side well, will need to also start expanding into being able to build story for that artist or story for that group of artists, etc., across all medium types. And so it will be about driving the narrative of that person across all of the different things. And then it will be marketing above and beyond, because there's going to be so many creators in the future, of marketing above and beyond all of the noise of those creators. And I think that you will see definitively those lines blurring, because again, for me, I think the future is about enabling community and creating value for community. And so it's not just going to be through a song. It's not just going to be through film. The one thing I will say, and I think the reason I'm so interested in gaming, is because the thing that I find really exciting is that sound can sit across all things that we do, as well as kind of gamified experiences. For the most part, you can gamify all of your experiences in the future, and I think a lot more of our experiences will be gamified. I also think that a lot more of our experiences will have sound as part of them, and I think that's a massive opportunity for music and for music companies.
Exciting times ahead, for sure.
Thank you, Mark.
Well, thanks so much for your time, and I hope we'll be following you, of course, and see what you come up with next. I'm sure it's going to be really exciting. And as a music fan and a musician myself, it keeps getting better. I mean, from my perspective, but.
Great.
Even though it also gets more precarious. I mean, let's not be too
romantic, of course.
But yeah.
Sure.
So thanks again.
Thank you so much, everyone. See ya. Bye.